I was 16 the morning Halvard Reskin waded out past the breakers with his boots still on and came back carrying something that wasn't a fish. We'd seen the wreck go down 2 nights before, a sliver of light crossing the sky and then nothing, a smear of fire on the water that the Coast Guard cutter never found. By dawn the tide had started giving pieces of it back. Halvard was the only one of us who went looking instead of just watching from the rail. She was caught in a tangle of pod webbing, mint-skinned, no bigger than a child of 6 though her face said older, gill slits along her throat working hard at air that didn't suit them. Halvard didn't ask anybody's permission. He cut her free with his bait knife, wrapped her in his oilcloth, and carried her up the rocks like she weighed nothing at all. "She's somebody's," I said, because that seemed like the thing to say. The whole village would be saying it by noon. "She's nobody's right now," Halvard said. "So she's mine till that changes." He didn't say it soft. He said it the way he'd tell you the nets needed mending. That was Halvard's whole manner, 61 years old, hands like dock rope, no patience for anything that wasn't useful, and somehow none of that stopped him from sitting up 3 nights running while the gill-marked girl learned to breathe our air without panicking at it. I crewed for him those 3 days because somebody had to keep the boat running while he tended her. I watched him figure out, by guesswork and her flinching, that salt water on her skin settled her better than fresh. I watched him learn she wouldn't eat anything that had been cooked, only raw, only cold. I watched her learn his name was Halvard by saying it back to him on the 4th try, in a voice like wet glass, and I watched something in his face that I'd never once seen there in 4 years of crewing for him. He named her Pell, after the old word for shell. She started following him around the wharf within a week, 3 steps behind, watching everything he did with his hands like she meant to learn it. Word travels faster than tide in a village that small. By the 2nd week, the Ostrander brothers came down from the salvage yard at Cray Point, the 2 of them and a man we didn't know, all 3 smelling like cigarette smoke and somebody else's money. "Heard you fished something up," the older Ostrander said. Devlin, his name was. He didn't look at Pell. He looked at Halvard the way you look at a man you're about to make an offer to. "Fished up some webbing," Halvard said. "Threw the rest back." That's not what the harbor master logged. Harbor master logs what he's told. Devlin smiled like that was charming. "There's a buyer wants anything that comes off that wreck. Pays by the kilo for hardware. Pays a great deal more for anything that breathes." He let that sit. "We're not asking you to do anything but step aside, old man. Whatever she is, she's not yours to keep." "She's not anybody's to sell either," Halvard said. "Get off my dock." They left. They came back 4 days later with a number, more money than Halvard had seen in a decade of fishing, and Halvard turned them down standing in his own doorway with Pell's hand wrapped around 2 of his fingers, not even looking at the bills. They came back a 3rd time without a number at all, just Devlin's man, the quiet one, standing on the dock at dusk with his coat open enough to show what he was carrying. "You're an old man with a boat," the quiet one said. "You understand how this goes." "I understand fine," Halvard said. "I've fished this cove 40 years. I know every rock in it, every current under it, and every place a boat that doesn't belong here runs aground." "You understand how that goes?" The quiet one didn't answer. He looked, instead, at Pell, who'd come out onto the step behind Halvard without being called, gill slits flaring at the cold air, watching the stranger the way you watch weather changing. Halvard didn't move her behind him. He just stood there, between nothing and nobody, and let the man look his fill and decide for himself what kind of trouble he wanted. The man left without a word. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 3 nights later they came for her properly, not Devlin, not the quiet one, but 4 men in a fast boat with no running lights, timed to a tide they didn't understand in a cove they'd never fished. I was on the dock mending line when I heard the engine and ran for Halvard's house, and by the time I got him outside the boat had already grounded itself on the bar nobody from outside ever finds in the dark. Hull tearing open on rock that's only 6 inches under at low water and invisible at any other time. Halvard didn't go to help them off the rocks straight away. He went and got Pell first, set her up on the high ground behind the house where the spray couldn't reach, told her to stay, and only then walked down with a lantern to where 4 men were standing waist-deep in freezing water around a boat that wasn't going anywhere again. "You'll want the tide to turn," he told them. "4 hours, maybe 5. You'll live that long if you stop fighting the current and let it carry you to the spit." He didn't offer them his own boat. He didn't leave them either. He stood on the rocks with the lantern lit until the first gray of morning so they'd have something to swim toward, and when the harbor patrol finally came for them he told the patrol exactly where they'd run aground and exactly why, and let the rocks finish explaining the rest. Devlin himself came one more time, alone, 2 weeks later, not for Pell but to settle accounts on his own pride. He found Halvard re-tearing the hull and stood there a while before he said anything worth hearing. "You cost me 4 men's wages and a boat," Devlin said. "And a buyer who doesn't forget being told no twice." "Then tell your buyer the cove isn't selling," Halvard said, not looking up from his work. "Tell him that as many times as he needs to hear it. He'll send someone who isn't local. Someone the rocks won't catch." "Maybe," Halvard said. "But he'll have to find this water first, and I've got 40 years on anybody he sends." He set the tar brush down long enough to look Devlin square. "You're not a stupid man, Devlin. You know the difference between a fight you can win and one that just costs you. This is the second kind. Go be smart somewhere else." Devlin left, and whatever he told his buyer, it worked. No boat without running lights ever came back. Word gets around a coast fast as it gets around a village, and the word that got around was that the old man's water would do to you what he wouldn't have to. Pell stayed 11 years. She grew the way children grow when nobody's measuring them against a clock, which is to say all at once and you only notice afterward. She learned to mend nets better than I ever did. She learned to read the swell before a storm better than men who'd fished 40 years longer than her, including Halvard, who admitted it without any sourness at all. She called him nothing but his name the whole time, never anything softer, and somehow that was the most tender thing in the house, that she never needed a better word than the one that was already true. Her own people found the cove in the 12th year. A small craft, quiet engines, 3 of them coming ashore at low tide the way Halvard himself would have come ashore if he were the one doing the finding, slow, careful, reading the water first. They didn't come with weapons or money. They came with a name for her that wasn't Pell, and a story about a transport that should never have gone down, and grief held so plainly on their faces that even Halvard, who trusted almost nothing, trusted that. He didn't argue when she told him she had to go. He helped her pack what little she owned into a sack that had once held bait, and he walked her down to the boat himself, and at the water's edge he said the only soft thing I ever heard him say to her, which was, "You were never mine to keep. I just kept you till this came." She comes back twice a year, even now. Brings her own children down to the same rocks where Halvard taught her to gut a fish, teaches them the names of currents he gave her in a language none of them were born to. Halvard's gone 8 years now, but the cove still belongs to whoever fishes it the way he did, careful, plain, willing to let his own water do the deciding when men came who didn't understand it. I tell people, when they ask why I never left this coast for easier work, I crewed for the only man I ever knew who looked at something the world had already decided to price, and decided instead to just keep it. Not because it was his. Because nobody else's claim on her was worth a damn, and his decency, such as it was, never once needed a reason beyond that.